Holy smokes! I thought I had seen everything, but what happened in the airport terminal was something out of a war movie. She stood there like a rock, and this girl from the administration was just burning with anger. I'm sorry, seriously, but your clothes do not meet the sanitary standards established here at Central Hub Airport, she declared, looking at the woman with undisguised disgust. We are very sorry, but we cannot allow you to board your flight in this condition. The silence in the domestic departures hall was so thick that it could be cut, and the girl's words pierced it like a bullet. Only the dull smell of bleach and indifferent announcements, repeated somewhere far away, reigned coldly in this vast space. Ashley Vance, the gate attendant, seemed to believe that her mission was to maintain absolute order in this place. Cleanliness, compliance with the rules. This was her universe, her unshakable truth. But now an alien object had flown into her perfect world. It was Sierra Rhodes, a woman who turned out to be a sergeant major in the Marine Corps Special Forces. Her uniform was in terrible condition. Her true color was impossible to guess. She was covered in dirt, and her knees and elbows were rubbed to the point of holes. She had just returned from hell on earth, from a major disaster area in another country, where she was rescuing people on the front lines. Her face was a carved sculpture of fatigue, evidence of 7 days without sleep, but her back was straight like a steel rod. Ashley took Sierra's appearance as a personal insult, as unacceptable filth, defiling this clean space and disrupting order. Her eyes widened and pierced Sierra with a sharp look, her hidden but disgusting disgust expressed in a cold, cruel tone. But even after this insulting tirade, Sierra's face did not flinch. She could feel the rough, hard fabric of her uniform, dried by a long mission, and she looked calmly at Ashley. Her eyes were as calm as a lake after a storm. No anger, no sadness. Only a barely noticeable, mocking smile touched her lips. This too calm behavior only strengthened Ashley's painful obsession with order. Why is she silent? Doesn't she realize how dirty she is? Or does she despise me and the rules of this airport? Silent steel and the mania for cleanliness. Two worlds that would never intersect now stood in this transit zone. Sierra's calm smile mercilessly snapped the last thread of self-control that remained in Ashley's soul. She was sure that she had been offended. This dirty woman completely ignored her absolute rightness, her rules. This made Ashley even more stubborn. She took a step back and nervously tapped her index finger on the large information board on the wall. Her thin rubber glove made an unpleasant squeaking sound. As you can see, there are rules here. Strict sanitary regulations based on the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. If a passenger potentially contaminated like you boards an airplane, it poses a safety risk and inconvenience to other customers. This is strictly prohibited. Her voice was cold, completely devoid of emotion. It was as if a robot was reading out a pre-programmed code. She no longer saw Sierra Rhodes as a person. She saw only the fact that the rules had been broken. Ashley used the power that sanitation gave her as a shield. And behind this shield, she transformed her abnormal obsession with cleanliness into an unwavering righteousness. No one dared to argue with such righteousness. She felt the cold plastic of the scoreboard with her fingertips and decided that it was time for the next step, to force this woman to surrender. This was to be her ultimatum, which would end this conflict and completely destroy the dignity of the female soldier. The passengers around her, noticing this unusual scene, watched from afar. Whispers, condemning glances, and barely audible contempt. All this pierced Sierra's back like needles. But Sierra did not move. She stood still, and her excessive imperturbability turned Ashley's weapon of righteousness into nothing. Sierra waited for the next move in the midst of this humiliating situation. What did her silence mean? And what would Ashley, this queen of cleanliness, say in front of this wall of silence? Continued story. Ashley's inner world. Ashley Vance's world was like a perfectly ordered glass case. Not a speck of dust, not a scratch, a transparent world. And in it she ruled like a queen. Only her rules, her aesthetics were the absolute law. Since childhood she had hated dirt terribly. She did not understand children playing in the sand. She looked with contempt at the innocent smiles of her classmates who deliberately walked through puddles after the rain. For her, dirt was evil, disrupting the harmony of the world. When she grew up, this cleanliness became her essence. Always a starched shirt, Not a single fingerprint on her smartphone. Everything lay on her desk, aligned to the millimeter. Her surroundings were supposed to be a mirror of her psyche. Always perfectly clean. Working at the Central Hub Airport was her calling. Maintaining order, security and cleanliness in this huge space where tens of thousands of people scurry around. It was the perfect battlefield for her twisted righteousness and perfectionism. Some of her colleagues considered her a professional, others an unbearable neurotic. But Ashley didn't care. They simply didn't understand what true perfection was. And then Sierra Rhodes appeared. Her presence was like a lump of dirt thrown into her glass world. The dirt on Sierra's uniform was not just dirt. Ashley could smell the raw smell of sweat and maybe even blood, something she would never understand. It was a symbol of chaos and impurity. The thing she hated most, an uncontrolled reality. Ashley unconsciously squeezed the bottle of antiseptic she kept under the counter. I want to spray her all over and clean her. A crazy desire ran down her spine. Why is she so calm? Doesn't she understand how dirty she is and how deeply she offends everyone around her? Sierra's steely silence was like fuel for Ashley's irritation. If she argued, if she screamed, then I could just write her off as an emotional passenger who didn't follow the rules. But she says nothing. She just stands there. Her very presence seemed like a silent challenge to Ashley's righteousness. I will not forgive. Ashley's cold decision echoed in her soul. I will not let anyone taint my world. I must break this woman here and now. Her existence is a mistake and my righteousness is absolute. I must show it to the other passengers and most importantly, to herself. Ashley took a deep breath. It was like a ritual before an execution. She took something from under the counter. It would be the perfect tool to complete this humiliation. It was a white, thin, disposable protective suit. A dry, rustling sound rang out eerily in the silence of the gate. And another one, a large, clear plastic bag. The sharp chemical smell emanating from it testified to Ashley's abnormal cleanliness. She picked up the two items with 2 fingers as if they were dirty garbage and threw them in front of Sierra. You have little choice. Her voice became completely mechanical and cold. She imagined the humiliation that Sierra would now inflict, and a thin, cruel smile appeared on her lips. In the depths of her eyes, the Queen of Cleanliness waited to pass sentence on the rebel. This choice was a trap to completely destroy Sierra Rhodes' dignity. Whatever she chose, only deep humiliation awaited her. Ashley Vance was preparing to deliver the most merciless blow to protect the order of her ideal world. Revealing the secret. The white hazmat suit and transparent plastic bag that Ashley had slipped her seemed to Sierra a choice between surrender and a body bag. A sharp, chemical smell forced open the door to her memory. It wasn't the smell of antiseptic. It was very similar to the smell of hell she had been in a few days before. The memory of that horror flashed through her mind instantly. A mountainous region in the Southeast Asian Republic, SAR. A massive landslide caused by monsoons had swallowed an entire village. She was there as part of the U.S. disaster response team. What she saw was absolute despair. Brown mud was taking everything away. Homes, fields, people's humble lives. Screams for help drowned in the roar, then died away. The air was filled with the smell of damp earth, rotting plants, and death. They found a living person. Come here. A comrade's shout snapped Sierra out of her thoughts. They hadn't slept, barely eaten, knee-deep in dirty water. For days they had been scraping through the rubble and soil with their hands. Their nails were torn off. Blood was dripping from their fingers. But no one stopped. In this form, Sierra carried an old woman who had been trapped under a rock while climbing a slippery slope. In this form, she held a small child buried underground, begging for her weak breathing not to stop. In this form, she cried quietly over the body of her comrade, who had died in the second landslide. This dirt was not just dirt. It was sweat and tears, and even the blood of her and her comrades spilled to save lives. This form was not just clothing. It was a priceless comrade who had survived the most terrible mission with her. This was a weight the woman before her did not understand, and never would. Deep inside, Sierra felt something ignite. Hot as magma, it rose from her belly. She wanted to grab the woman by the collar and shout, "Do you understand what this filth means? Do you understand the weight of the lives engraved on this uniform?" But she didn't. Years of training had taught her never to show emotion to the enemy. Anger clouds judgment. A soldier without composure endangers not only himself but the entire unit. It was an ironclad rule that had been drilled into her at Quantico since her first days on the job. This was a different mission, one she was on now: restraint. Sierra closed her eyes tightly once, then slowly opened them. She forced her emotions back with her breathing. Inhale, exhale. All she could hear was the loud pounding of her heart. She knew how senseless it would be to let her emotions explode. She couldn't take off this uniform. No one was allowed to touch her. Here, under this dirt, under these holes, a much more difficult secret was hidden. This was her absolute task. This dirty form was her last defense. Let no one misunderstand. Even if I endure this humiliation, this pride, this mission, I must protect no matter what. Sierra looked straight at Ashley again. The calm that had been there before was gone. In its place, an icy calm and unwavering determination appeared in her gaze. She looked not at Ashley but beyond her, at what she was supposed to protect, the state, such a large and heavy entity. She pressed her lips tightly together. An iron taste spread in her dry mouth. The pain barely restrained her mind. Ashley's cruel ultimatum was approaching with every second. What would she do? Sierra waited silently like an iron statue. A flash of icy fire flashed in Sierra's eyes for a moment, and Ashley Vance shuddered for a moment. It wasn't just rebellion. It was deeper and colder. But that feeling quickly burned away in the fire of her arrogance. Why should I be afraid? I'm right. She sighed deliberately, loudly, as if confirming her rightness. And like garbage, she threw the protective suit and plastic bag onto the rack. A rustling sound cut through the tense air. Several passengers held their breath. Everyone waited for what would happen next. There's little choice. Ashley's voice became even colder, sharper, like a blade in absolute temperature. Either you undress here immediately, change into this protective suit, and hermetically pack this uniform in a bag. Ashley paused and looked Sierra's dirty uniform up and down with disgust. Or you refuse the flight here and now. Choose. And she struck the final blow. Her lips twisted into a cruel smile. I'm sorry, but garbage cannot be transported in the cabin of an airplane. Garbage. The word pierced Sierra's heart like a shard of broken glass. Her eyes turned red. Those hands that held the body of my fallen comrade. That shoulder that old woman was lying on. That voice with which I soothed the child. All this is garbage in front of this woman? She clenched her jaws tightly in rage. The grinding of her teeth echoed in her skull. But Sierra did not move. She could not move. If she gave in to emotions, everything would be over. Her important mission that she was carrying would be destroyed. Seeing her immobility, Ashley was convinced of her victory. This woman will not say anything in response. My rightness has completely won. She folded her arms triumphantly on her chest. Well? The other passengers are waiting. Make a decision quickly. Her insistent voice made the air even heavier. The passengers' gazes were like knives piercing Sierra. Come on, hurry up. Take off if you're so dirty. Don't you have any basic decency? Their silent thoughts were arrows. Loneliness. Humiliation. Despair. Sierra slowly reached for the bag lying on the rack. Her fingers trembled slightly. Ashley smiled contentedly. Yes, that's right. A dirty one must obey as it should. As Sierra's fingers touched the bag, the smiling face of the little girl she had pulled from the slip flashed before her inner gaze. Thank you, Auntie, she said, holding out a small, dirty handle with a single flower. No, this isn't trash. Sierra froze. She slowly raised her head. In the depths of her eyes, something she had suppressed for so long began to burn quietly. It was not anger, not sadness. It was something calmer but stronger. The unwavering fire of determination. I refuse. A firm voice rang out in the hall. It was not loud, but it rang heavily in everyone's ears. The smile on Ashley's face disappeared. What did you say? Sierra looked straight into Ashley's eyes and repeated clearly. I will not take off this uniform and I will not refuse the flight. I am boarding this plane in this form. It was a declaration of war. The quiet steel was broken, and the dangerous fire in Sierra's eyes was only a prelude to the approaching storm. The first crack appeared in the perfect world of the Queen of Purity. New character and the vulture of secrecy. What are you saying? Ashley Vance's delicate face twisted in disbelief. It was a shock, as if she had turned to the wall and it had answered. Her perfectly programmed mind had not foreseen the option of refusal. Didn't you hear? I said I was taking this flight. Sierra's voice was calm, but there was steel in that silence that could not be broken. It was an unwavering determination forged by thousands of hours of rigorous training. Ashley's face began to flush. The anger of the insult and the irritation of disobedience completely destroyed her self-control. Don't you dare. You have no choice. Rules are rules. Otherwise, or I'll call security. I may report you to the police for obstruction. Her scream, like a shriek, echoed through the gate. Her perfect queenly mask cracked and crumbled. A fragile person peeked out from under her, terribly afraid that her values would be questioned. The passengers backed away, frightened by the outburst. This was no longer just a passenger problem. They were entering a dangerous zone where madness met madness. Even at the mention of security, Sierra's face didn't change. She stood still, as if in the eye of a storm. She took a step closer to the counter. The tiny movement made Ashley flinch in fear. Sierra propped her elbows on the counter, leaned forward, and whispered in a cold but razor-sharp voice that only Ashley could hear. Call it. Security or the police, whoever you want. Sierra paused. Her eyes pierced Ashley. It was the cold, absolute gaze of a predator facing its prey. If you do this, do you understand the consequences this will have for you personally and for your company? It wasn't a threat. It was a calm statement of fact. She simply stated the irreversible future that would begin now. This quiet voice was absolutely stronger than Ashley's scream, and completely took over the situation. The blood drained from Ashley's face. She was pierced by icy fear. Who is she? She's not just a sergeant major. Her posture, the weight of her words, the fire in her eyes, all this went beyond the usual. But Ashley's pride did not allow her to retreat. To break down in front of this dirty woman, in front of so many passengers, was out of the question. What nonsense! Stop it now. She tried to maintain authority with a trembling voice. At this moment, Vance, what are you doing here? A low but tense voice came from behind. Turning around, Ashley saw Mr. Harrison, the manager of this department. He hurriedly ran up, sweating, barely able to catch his breath. Mr. Harrison looked sharply at Sierra and Ashley alternately, trying to instantly understand the situation. Ashley saw in him a savior and began to ramble. Mr. Harrison, this passenger insists on boarding, although she does not meet sanitary standards. I've warned her so many times, but she's completely ignoring me. She was desperately trying to show how right she was and how stupid her opponent was. Mr. Harrison believed his subordinate and looked at Sierra with a stern face. Madam, I'm sorry, but rules are rules. Please obey our instructions, okay? To the typical manager, Mr. Harrison, Sierra was just a problem customer. He wanted to get things done quickly and get rid of the trouble. Ashley felt confident when the manager's authority was on her side. Well, now you're done, she smiled triumphantly. Loneliness. A giant wall of authority stood in front of Sierra. Everyone thought that no one would support her now. And at that very moment, a man quietly emerged from the crowd, as if gliding through water. His appearance changed the air and everyone froze. It was not fear, not surprise. It was the awe that one feels in the face of overwhelming force. Sierra recognized him and barely relaxed her shoulders. It was Major Jake Kilo Kelly, her immediate commander and the person she trusted most. Sierra's silent resistance was now entering a new phase. Mr. Harrison was a typical middle manager. His motivation was one: to avoid trouble, to not ruin his reputation. In his world, reputation and personal safety were more important than justice or truth. Ashley Vance's report was very convenient for him. A dirty passenger against an honest employee. The solution was obvious. Eliminate the problem customer and protect the employee. It was the easiest and least risky solution. He saw nothing but a problem in Sierra Rhodes. Her dirty uniform was a symbol of the troubles thrown into his quiet life. He saw neither the deep weariness in her eyes nor her upright posture. He saw nothing but an obstacle to his career. "Madam, I repeat, if you do not obey our rules, we must deny you boarding. This is the final ultimatum." Mr. Harrison's voice was mock polite, but it carried undeniable pressure. He was using the company's power as a shield to corner Sierra. What had begun as a personal conflict between an employee and Sierra had now become the hard, cold wall of corporate decision before Sierra. Ashley triumphed in her heart. "Yes, Mr. Harrison. Tell her that." Her rightness had been officially confirmed by the system. Sierra would never be able to resist this huge wall now. The air among the passengers had completely tilted in favor of Mr. Harrison and Ashley. "Why doesn't she just give up? Of course the company is right." Whispers echoed around. Sierra was completely isolated, alone against the corporation and the irresponsible power of the crowd. This pressure was a dragging and disgusting desperation, not unlike the fear of death on the front lines. Her struggle for pride had become the awkward antics of an undisciplined person. She pursed her lips. Her vision blurred with resentment, but she desperately restrained herself. Showing tears here meant defeat. She was staring straight at that merciless wall. Mr. Harrison was irritated by her resistance. "She still doesn't understand?" To end this unpleasant matter, he made one last move. "Vance, contact the security manager. If she continues, we will consider this as obstruction of work and will be forced to take appropriate action." This was the de facto announcement of expulsion. "Yes, sir." Ashley replied triumphantly and reached for the intercom in triumph. Sierra watched this silently. Was all options really exhausted? Would she have to humbly surrender her pride and be thrown out of here in disgrace? A cold fog of despair began to envelop her heart. Just then, knock, knock, knock. The soft but steady sound of leather boots. The sound was surprisingly clear, as if absorbing all other noise. The passengers turned in the direction of the sound at the same time. A man emerged calmly from the crowd. He was in his 40s. He was wearing a perfectly fitted, expensive black suit, and he held an old but well-kept leather briefcase in his hand. There was no emotion on his face, but his gaze was sharp as a hawk's, deep and penetrating. The man stopped abruptly right next to Sierra. He said nothing to Sierra. He didn't look at Mr. Harrison or Ashley. He just stood there, and his very presence instantly changed the atmosphere. It was the calm before the storm, a calm prelude to a greater drama. Mr. Harrison and Ashley were alerted by his unusual aura. "Who is it?" Before Mr. Harrison could say anything, the man spoke quietly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Can I have a word?" That one sentence was the trigger for everything that was to happen. Climax. National asset. Continued. Major Jake Kilo Kelly had stood in the shadow of the column all this time, quietly observing this strange confrontation. There was no panic, no anger, no other emotion on his face. He looked like a skilled chess player coldly analyzing the moves on the board. His mission was one, to safely and reliably deliver his subordinate Sierra back to the United States. Any obstacle would be coldly and efficiently eliminated. That was his role. While Sierra remained steely silent and endured the senseless insults, he did not move. He trusted in her strength and her marine discipline. He waited for the moment when she herself would declare a rebuff. When Sierra said firmly, "I refuse," Major Kelly smiled faintly. That's it. That was his signal for action. As Major Kelly began to walk, the crowd parted on its own, as if the sea had parted before him. People instinctively sensed his unique aura. It was not fear, nor was it authority. It was a quiet but absolute pressure that only a man who had been through countless terrible situations could radiate. Knock, knock. His footsteps were surprisingly loud. This regular rhythm was like a pendulum counting down the time until the verdict was pronounced. Mr. Harrison was the most confused. Who is this man? He is not just a tourist. His impeccable posture, his unwavering confidence. This was clearly not the type Mr. Harrison had ever had to deal with. His instinct for self-preservation howled horribly. This guy is a problem. Ashley Vance was also wary of the stranger's appearance. A new object had invaded her ideal world. She made no secret of her disgust. How can we help you?" Ashley turned to him warily. But Major Kelly wasn't looking at them. His gaze was directly at Sierra. His eyes were a mixture of the commander's severity and some deep paternal tenderness. "Good job, Sarge." These short words made the tension in Sierra's body go away. She felt a strange relief, as if half of her heavy burden had been lifted. She only nodded silently. That was enough for the two of them. They were united by a trust stronger than a million words. Only then did Major Kelly turn to Mr. Harrison and Ashley. "Can I have a word?" His voice was low and calm, but Mr. Harrison felt a cold sweat on his back. There was an unknown depth hidden in that calm. Excuse me, who are you?" Mr. Harrison could barely squeeze out the words. Major Kelly didn't introduce himself. He knew it wasn't necessary. He just looked at Mr. Harrison intently and slowly continued. "It seems my subordinate has caused you a lot of inconvenience. I heard Commander apologize for that." With that, he bowed his head slightly. His politeness reassured Mr. Harrison a little. Perhaps he is a reasonable man. But that reassurance was shattered in an instant. "However, before that, I would like to clarify something." Major Kelly's tone dropped slightly. "Do you understand the true meaning of what you were about to do, and the true weight of your actions?" The question sounded eerily soul-searching. Mr. Harrison and Ashley exchanged confused glances. The true meaning? Major Kelly did not answer. Instead, he slowly set his leather briefcase down on the rack. There was a click, the dry sound of a metal clasp opening. It was like the ominous clang of Pandora's box opening. His next move would put an end to this long conflict. And this end would be far more terrible for Mr. Harrison and Ashley than they could have imagined. Top secret. Major Jake Kelly calmly opened his leather briefcase. No unnecessary movement, no hesitation. The refined habit inherent in the military, forged by years of service, clearly showed that he had been through similar tense situations many times. Mr. Harrison swallowed, watching his every move intently. His heart was pounding. Instinct warned. Something irreversible was about to happen. Ashley Vance also stared at him, a mixture of irritation and curiosity. What is he going to do? It's just a briefcase. Major Kelly pulled a thick envelope from his briefcase. It was no ordinary brown envelope but high-quality 8.5 by 11-inch paper. And most importantly, it was sealed extremely tightly with black and red wax, similar to sealing wax. The envelope barely gave off a special spicy smell. As soon as this envelope appeared, the air in the gate area became heavier and denser. Everyone present froze, looking at the strange object as if it were a relic with a secret. Major Kelly did not give the envelope to Ashley. She no longer existed for him. His gaze was directly on Mr. Harrison, who was panicking behind Ashley. Coldly, businesslike, but flawlessly, Major Kelly held out the heavy envelope to Mr. Harrison with both hands. The action was solemn like an offering in a temple. "Oh, what is this?" Mr. Harrison, confused but reflexively, accepted it. The weight of the paper was felt in his hands. And it was not just physical weight. The incredible pressure hidden in it was transmitted from his fingers to his whole body. Because of this extraordinary aura, Mr. Harrison swallowed loudly. What the hell is this? This thought pierced everyone. It should have been just a problem with the passenger. But it turned into something incomprehensible and beyond. This envelope sealed in red was ready to radically change the course of this long and strange confrontation. Mr. Harrison felt the surface with trembling fingers. No address. No sender. Only the wax seal silently declared its importance. A thread of sweat ran down his temple. "Open it, please," Major Kelly urged him softly. There was an absolute tone in his voice that did not allow for refusal. Mr. Harrison felt that he had to do it, and finally obeyed, pressing his finger on the wax. A faint but irrevocable tearing sound echoed through the silence. It was the sound of a forbidden door opening. With a trembling hand, Mr. Harrison pulled out a thick sheaf of papers. On the first page he saw what caught his eye. His breath stopped. His heart froze as if it had turned to ice. There, large and powerful, 2 letters were printed that spoke of all his coming horror. Top secret. The ink was so bright red that it burned the eyes, like the color of blood, denoting the nation's top secret. In his 20-plus years at the airport, He had never seen that stamp on a real document, not on a screen or a printout. His blood froze instantly. His fingers went numb. He could barely breathe. Mr. Harrison's gaze slid lower, as if drawn by a magnet. There were two signatures. One, the sweeping signature of the Secretary of Defense. The second is the strong and square signature of the Secretary of Defense of an allied country critical to the United States. The two names of the top officials of two giant powers stood clearly side by side. A hissing sound. The blood drained from Mr. Harrison's face. What? What is this? What the hell is going on? His mind had completely shut down. This was no longer just a boarding problem. This was not sanitation. This was not obstruction of justice. This was the highest level of classified business involving diplomacy, the military, and a critical agreement between nations. Mr. Harrison clutched the document in trembling hands. The paper was damp with his sweat. He raised his eyes cautiously and looked at Major Kelly's calm, impassive face. And it was at that moment that all the pieces of the puzzle came together. That dirty uniform. That steely silence. That calm warning to understand the consequences. It all came down to those two letters, secret. He realized with all his being what a terrible, irreversible mistake they had made. The woman soldier in the dirty uniform, whom they called dirty and even garbage, was not just a soldier. She was one of the most important figures at the center of this top-secret joint project. And this uniform of hers was not just clothing. She herself was the last defense for the national secret. Ashley's pathetic righteousness, which she protected with tiny sanitary standards. Mr. Harrison's weak authority, which he used as a shield for his corporation. All this was powerless and ridiculous in the face of the gigantic and absolute essence of the state. His legs gave way. He could barely stand. He looked at Ashley, who seemed not yet to fully understand the criticality of the situation. She only looked nervously at the emergency and Mr. Harrison's tense face. The end. Someone whispered in Mr. Harrison's soul. His career, the company's reputation, everything was over at that very moment. Major Kelly spoke the first word after this revelation. Calmly, coldly. It was the gong that signaled the beginning of the long trial. Do you understand? There was no emotion in his voice. But this emotionlessness was the most terrible thing to Mr. Harrison. In Major Kelly's calm eyes he saw an absolute end, from which there was no escape.